Hey everybody, this is Kyle with Attack of the Fanboy, and this is Battleborn. I'm here with Will, who actually went to a preview event, got to play a ton of the game, and he's going to tell us all about it. So, the first question on I think a lot of people's minds is, what is Battleborn?
What is Battleborn? Kyle, I was kind of in the same situation as a lot of people, and I didn't know what this game was either. I think like the marketing for anything with, we have 25 characters and it's kind of designed like a MOBA. Fits
There's been a
in,
lot of those.
yeah, there have been a ton of those games, which is, and I actually talked to the developers about it. It's like, hard to differentiate yourself when that's your major selling point, right? So I wasn't sure what it was either, but I did get to play this game back at E3, and it was, decidedly a Gearbox title. You can totally tell by the way that the game looks, the characters, the environments, just the overall graphical style of the game, that this game, kind of looks and plays a lot like Borderlands. It's a cooperative shooter with a story attached to it. It's a competitive shooter that has a lot of competitive modes, or not a lot of competitive modes, but a few competitive modes, which is
Mhm.
basically, why we attended the preview event was to get a hands-on for the first time with these competitive elements of the game. Now, the gameplay that we're watching first is on a map called the Algorithm, and this is part of the campaign. I'm teamed up with four other players, and we're going to basically do a objective, kind of streamlined story mission,
Okay.
essentially. And
Yeah.
and that's a big part of this game, that five-player cooperative story, and it kind of plays to Gearbox's strengths
The
with
co-op and everything.
yeah, because that's basically what Borderlands was, right?
Yeah.
It was a four-player co-op game, or was it three?
It was four. Yep.
It was four. Yeah, it was a four-player co-op game, and that relied on a loot system to keep players coming back and earning new guns and completing higher level challenges. And Battleborn, I think, in my opinion, just takes a lot of the strengths that they had with that game, a lot of the things that worked, a lot of the things that people liked, and then just builds that out in a pretty incredible way. And as you can see from what this game looks like, you could certainly look at this game just at a glance and think that it might be Borderlands.
Yeah, it looks like a more cartoony Borderlands. Like they dialed it up to 11 a little bit.
A little bit, and I don't even know if it looks more cartoony, just or if it just looks that much sharper.
Hmm.
As far as just how everything looks. When you go back from Borderlands and look at this game just looks amazing. And in
Yeah.
person, this game looks amazing.
Do you
I
remember
thought it
what
looked.
system you were playing on?
It was just PC.
PC.
Yeah. But games like this can translate over to console as well. I think
Hmm.
because they don't have to rely on a lot of the just because of the art style, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not dealing with. Not that it
That
looks
part.
bad by any means. This is a
No, no. This
beautiful
just
looking game, but
yeah, it's like Wind Waker, how it translated really well. It still lives up just because something about this colorful art style.
yeah,
Uh,
and it
does
is beautiful.
yeah. So yeah, you kind of talked a little bit about how it's like Borderlands. And this mode you're playing now is just co-op. You're not facing off against other players, right?
Not at all. No, this is all co-op, and it's all. This is the solo mode. A lot of people have seen this. A lot of people got to play this at E3. They haven't made any secrets about this mode, but essentially we're all working together just to get to an end boss, and I've kind of split up the gameplay here. But as you can see, like as you're playing this, each and every time you play a campaign mode, you have this Helix system. You saw the level up section there, and in the right hand corner it says there's an augment available. Well, you can kind of spec your character in a number of different ways every single time you play the game, and that depends on how you want your character to perform. You've got a number of different special power-ups, and you can buffs for a lot of those power-ups by using this Helix system, which is a two-sided system that allows you to pick um, either or power up as you go down the skill tree,
Okay.
right?
So you don't have
On
to make like a ton of choices. At any level, you just have two things to
Yeah,
pick
at
from.
every level it's either this or that, and they each have different effects on how you perform in the game. And some are for buffing. The character I believe I'm using here is the archer, and she has a volley of arrows that you can shoot. Well, you can get a power up that says you have a lower cooldown time on that, or you can get a power up that will give you just added damage.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's one of the things that I don't like personally about MOBAs is I feel like if I go grades, I'm gonna just ruin my character. It's just, I become useless because I don't know what I'm doing and I picked the wrong thing once and all that. So that seems like a little bit of a better system for somebody like me.
yeah, I mean it's an interesting system. It's one that doesn't kind of lock you into anything definite because you can experiment every single time you play the game, and it can feel quite different. Which I thought was interesting, and we got to play quite a few games of this, and didn't I didn't find myself getting tired of it. And the open gearbox thing that just popped up was another aspect of the game that is quite different as well, that adds into. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you are with Borderlands, but one of the things about that game, like the major draw, was how many different weapon types there were. They used a random generator to mix and match different attributes for the weapons in that
Hmm.
game. So
Yeah.
every time you opened the chest, every time there were enemies that dropped items, you had a chance of getting something very cool. And in Battleborn, they have those same type of loot drops, but they all come down to dropping these buffs for your characters. You're not going to necessarily change the loadout as far as what your character is capable of doing, but it has these buffs that you can use in every single match once you earn them, and
So those actually are like permanent unlocks once you get them.
they are permanent unlocks.
Okay.
And but the thing is, it's kind of like how a lot of other games have been doing this. You're you see these things I'm picking up right now. These are currency that once you earn that currency, you earn points to actually use those buffs in the game. So you can't just constantly spam them. You have to actually earn them as you're playing, and that works in this cooperative mode, and that works in the competitive mode exactly the same way. It's a really interesting system I think they have in place for customization and the many different things that you can customize your character doing. Now, we earned these things during this preview event that, there were some things that didn't go quite as planned. Those buffs at the bottom, the gear, well, somebody happened to unlock one that just had a random effect where they got 700% damage. And it was just a glitch, really. And
Oh, they should leave that in the game, I think.
that's what I said. I was like, that would be kind of cool. I'd like to get one of those once in a while. But then it breaks the game, right? I mean, and it did because our team
Yeah.
dominated because all they had to do was hit somebody one time and they were dead.
Yeah.
But as you can see here, we're fighting kind of a mini boss for this section. And I just activated a flame turret, which is spinning around killing this guy. And those cost points as well. So you're earning these points. You're capturing those. I forget what they're called off the top of my head, but this currency type that allows you to do different things in the world, not just use your power ups, but use power ups in the world as well. It's a very interesting system that they have in place that makes every round feel fun. And
Gotcha.
there are so many different types of characters in this game. I think there's 25 characters that they've revealed so far, and
And
they
they're all like the characters are different classes essentially, right? They're not just cosmetic differences.
yeah, they're way different. So you have different characters from across the galaxy, right? So they've kind of created this new universe, and it's a completely new IP. It doesn't have any relationship to Borderlands, and it's got an overarching plot that essentially gives them the ability to add a number of different characters. So they've got like a sentient mushroom guy, they've got a robot steampunk guy, they've got the character I have. This is an elf with a bow and arrow. They've got a giant, you know, dude bro sort of guy with a giant machine gun. I mean, there's the central plot. The tactic they use is they say that there's one star remaining in the universe, and that all of these different races are converging on this star and it leads to a great war for these people to
Mm,
fight over the remaining resources
of
of the
course.
universe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever heard of a story
No, I mean that's a
like
really cool
that? Yeah,
story.
that's
Yeah.
an interesting
Like the
interesting way to say, here's how we got all these different characters in one place.
yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting. But there is a central kind of bad guy that makes these characters all band together, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah, and we're still looking at co-op here, but there is multiplayer. Does that play more like a standard MOBA, or is there a little bit of unique stuff in there as well?
yeah, there's definitely some unique stuff in there. Some of the stuff feels familiar, but I think it's the way that they implement this unfamiliar content, which is basically going to be putting in NPC characters. So you'll be fighting with your teammates against and with NPC characters, kind of like a MOBA, right? So instead of that, you've played a game that I haven't, that might be very similar to this, at least in some respects, in Smite.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Smite's
So
a pretty standard, more action-oriented MOBA, and this seems like a even more action-oriented
yeah,
MOBA.
this is definitely way more action oriented. This would be the equivalent of making an action game with heavy RPG elements with those MOBA elements as well. I think it's disingenuous to call this a MOBA. I know I can see why a lot of people would say that right out of the gate and go, oh well, you've got these things, and you're trying to help your NPCs across the map so you can take out the enemy tower on the other side, which is essentially what a MOBA is, right? But
But it seems like it's more taking that structure and placing a first-person shooter into it, along with these RPG elements that you're talking about.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the main core idea of what they're going with here. But there's just so much more to this than you would find, in that top-down, MOBA game. And I think that there's so much room for them to try different things that it's hard to really classify this thing as one particular thing. And this
Yeah.
is coming up on the very end of the cooperative gameplay, where we're kind of fighting off this big boss, big bad guy to finish out this level, Jeff.
Okay.
So
How long was the level from start to finish, do you think?
this mission probably took about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. This is actually the level I played at E3, so I was kind of familiar with it. But we weren't ever really in danger of dying in this cooperative mode. But there are multiple difficulty levels in this, which will make things exponentially harder.
Mhm.
And you can also do this stuff by yourself. So you don't have to play cooperatively. They
Okay.
kind of tweak the balances for the enemies. Some enemies are a little bit easier to take down when you're playing by yourself. I think there's fewer enemies, and you'll still get that same narrative-driven experience if you want to play it by yourself. But I would say that this game is definitely meant and was built to be played with other players.
Yeah, that's kind of how Borderlands was. Like you could play through, and I'm sure a lot of people did, but once you got your friends together and you had that communication going and you were going on the same missions together, that's where it really lit up and became a phenomenon.
And it gave it that replay value, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you could, and I think this is kind of has that same thing in the cooperative aspects of it. And I, asked them, why isn't this called Borderlands 3? While I was at this preview event, and they gave me the reasoning that you can only work. I mean, you get tired of working on things. They seem to be really passionate about making a new IP.
Hmm.
And I think they've taken the lessons that they've learned from Borderlands and kind of put them in here and made a lot of the competitive changes to the game that maybe Borderlands players might have been asking for. If
Hmm.
you ever wanted to see multiplayer in Borderlands, this is certainly
It's as close
something.
as you're gonna get
This
right
is as
now.
close as you're going to get right now.
Yeah.
So we moved into the first competitive mode that we played here with this one is called Capture, and it puts two teams of heroes in a fast-paced death match. I'm reading this and must capture and hold objectives to win the map. So basically, I believe there are three capture
Game
points
modes.
on here, A, B, and
Okay.
C. As you can see, I picked a new character here, and this character is entirely different than the bow and arrow character. This guy does not shoot anything. He's got samurai swords, and as you'll see in this gameplay, it is a lot of fun to go in there and chop people up with
Mhm.
these swords. It is a lot different than sitting back and playing with the bow and arrow. And,
Oh yeah.
every single character class is different like this, and they have different abilities. And I think you're going to get a better chance to see like that guy with the giant machine gun, right?
That would be me right there. The guy
But
with a
what's
ton of health that just does a ton of damage too.
and I think he was the one that got the. This is the round where we just wrecked them because we had the extra stat buff.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, but that is, I think, definitely the cool thing about this game is how many different characters there are. It kind of lends. I found myself wanting to try all of them while I
Hmm.
was there because they each had such different feelings to them that they were just fun to play with and explore. Now, obviously, if you're going to play a game like this in a competitive setting, you're going to get tied to characters that you like. But I've just found myself, I mean, not just kind of engrossed by how well the game looks, but how it plays and how many different options there were as far as your characters and the character customization. It just felt like a deep, very deep experience, and it kind of caught me off guard, honestly. Because after I played it at E3, I was like, okay, this is another competitive, Borderlands type shooter without the characters that I really care about,
Hmm.
you know. And playing this game, I had quite a fun time with it.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, just looking at the designs, I mean, all of the characters look so different. You had that giant guy, and then even the map designs. This is totally different than the map that you were just on.
Right, but it
They seem to have
features
just blown variety like crazy.
absolutely, and you'll see like as this map wears on, as this match wears on, it's also got a lot of the elements from the cooperative play, right? So that thing that they destroyed underneath the base here was something that kind of buffs the enemy team, or there's turrets, or things that will give you extra health or extra shields, and you're controlling these different points on the map. This isn't, something that has been never been done before, right?
Yeah.
This sort of capture and hold mode has been done before, certainly, but and it's been done before in games like maybe I'd liken this to say a Team Fortress, right? You've got
Okay. Yeah.
a lot of different classes, even though it's not solely a shooter. As I'm hiding here because I have no guns, then I just love. You see, this is one where he blinded me. There's so many different moves that these characters can do. You just never know what you're gonna get.
What was the best move that you unlocked?
I
Can you
liked
compare
playing
those?
the samurai the best because you could shoot them up in the air. That was kind of like your ranged attack. And then
Hmm.
once you shot them up in the air, you would warp in, start slashing them up with their swords. Then you can start throwing swords at people. I loved this character, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he was definitely fun. But there
Yeah.
was a lot of tactics involved in this game as well, and that leads me to believe that it's going to be quite balanced.
Yeah. And the multiplayer is 5 on 5.
This one is 5 on 5, yeah.
Okay. Do you
And
remember any of the other game modes that were available in multiplayer?
I believe they only have three announced right now, and I got to talk to Randy Varnell of Gearbox Software, and that was another one of the questions I asked. It's like, what kind of sandbox do you have here, or toolbox do you have here that are you going to be adding new modes as you go along? And he's like, yes. Here's another one. This is called Meltdown. But the ones they were talking about at the event were Capture, which we just saw, this mode, Meltdown, and Incursion, which has already been out there a lot. That's the one. That Incursion mode is the mode that people kind of really drew the comparisons to the MOBA,
Hmm.
because it just really has a lot of those MOBA ties to it, and you're protecting minions and trying to get to the other base and destroy the tower. So, naturally people just said, okay, this is a Gearbox's take on a MOBA.
Gotcha.
Now, this mode, Meltdown, is does have a little bit of MOBA aspect as well. You've got two teams of heroes, and you've got to guide your minions to an incinerator, right? And as weird as that sounds, you just have to, you get
You got to
points
burn
for,
them.
yeah, you get points for every minion that you that make it to the incinerator, and the team with the most points wins, because the other team has minions going to their incinerator, and the objective is stop the other minions from getting into their incinerator, allow yours to get to theirs. But at the same time, you're fighting against the other team who's
Hmm.
trying to protect their minions as well. So now this mode was a little bit more hard to grasp right away, and to accentuate that, I picked a character who was a little bit more difficult. So some characters are very, very straightforward, right? You've got a bow and arrow, shoot it at the other people.
Yeah.
You've got a gun, shoot them. You've got a sword, slash them. This was more like of a witch character who was a little bit harder to get a grasp on for me. Plus the new game mode, I wasn't really sure what I was doing. But regardless, I think as interesting as this was, it's kind of like that Warzone thing, right? It's like, well, how do you play? Without
Yeah.
a tutorial, I don't know what I'm doing. So, I mean, I do think there may be some barrier to entry in some of these game modes that are a little less like traditional capture the flag or capture these
Mhm.
points. This is something entirely different.
Oh, but I'm sure the community that forms around the game will happily walk you through it very nicely. They
Oh yeah.
won't call you names or
No,
anything.
they won't call you names. No, no, they won't.
Yeah.
They won't shame you.
So
But
I pulled up a quote from Gearbox. They actually said that Battleborn is their most ambitious game ever, which is saying a lot because I mean they've done Borderlands 1 and 2, the pre-sequel, and a few other games. Gearbox is a pretty well-known developer. From what little time you've put into it, do you think that so far they're living up to that expectation?
I would think absolutely. I mean, when you look at the scope of Borderlands, it's not even close to what they're doing here, right? With the Not to say that this is, I mean, we haven't played enough of this game to know whether this is going to be better than Borderlands,
Yeah.
or as well received as Borderlands was from the community. Ambitious is the key word there, and I think absolutely, with all the progression elements for Battleborn, with all the different enemy types, with all the different game modes, they're trying to do something for everyone here, right? They've got
Yeah.
character classes that fit just about any sort of play style. And if you like first-person shooters, you've got first-person shooter characters. If you like fantasy characters, you've got witches and wizards. If you like samurais, you've got that guy that I used earlier. There's just, I think, the breadth of the character design, and then mix that in with the seemingly unlimited ways to customize your character every single round. It's just one of those things where I don't think Gearbox's strength is necessarily just making shooters, right? They've
Mhm.
designed this to mix and match a bunch of different genres, and I think it comes together extremely well.
Very
So
cool.
is it ambitious? I definitely think it is. I think it's more ambitious in them saying, okay, we've got Borderlands, right? We could make Borderlands 3 um,
Yeah,
tomorrow,
and just make a
and
ton
it
of
would
cash.
and it would make a bunch of money. But what I got from them was like, yeah, we like Borderlands, we still love Borderlands, but we're also passionate about trying to give people new experiences. And I think that's a lot of like what people constantly bitch and moan about on the internet, right? It's
Hmm.
like, yeah, well, I don't want Borderlands 7.
Yeah,
I want something new.
yeah,
And I think they take a lot of their strengths and put them into this game. Things they know that it's going to work. Things that they know the community is going to want from a Gearbox cooperative game, and then add in some competitive stuff that probably give this game extremely long legs, and built this idea that's completely expandable. Uh, I definitely think this is probably their most ambitious game that
yeah.
they've ever made. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Did they into the technicals of like what systems it's going to be on, when is a release date, and is it a free to play game also?
Yeah, that's what I asked him too, because I know we've had this conversation before. It's like, what the fuck is Battleborn?
Yeah.
What is this game?
The
And
name is the biggest problem
because
because you have
they had a couple games that said battle in,
Bloodborne,
yeah,
Battle
there was
Cry, and
Battle
Battleborn.
Cry. It was Battle Cry is the one that got me, because Battle
Hmm.
Cry was a game coming from Bethesda that
It's a lot like this.
right, well, it's supposed to be. I think
Doesn't
this
look
is
as good.
more,
I've played
not
that.
even close.
Yeah.
This is something that they have released the platforms available on and release date. It's coming to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows PC with a February 9th release date attached to it.
Awesome. That's not too far away actually.
Yeah, and this is not free to play. This is a $59.99.
Full blown game. So
Yeah.
that's good because it at least means there won't be a ton of microtransactions.
Well,
I'd
there
rather.
shouldn't be.
No, we'll see.
There are definitely some ways that they can use. They obviously didn't talk about that
Yeah.
at the event that I was at. But as with anything, there's so much unlockable and earnable things in this game. I could see them selling packs and treasure chests and stuff like that. But by no means a confirmation that that's exactly what's going to happen in this game. But yeah, that was one of the things I wasn't sure of either. With hero shooters are generally what people that are making free to play shooters do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got quite a few of
Class
those.
based kind of shooters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
but
MOBAs
no,
in general.
this is definitely not that.
Okay.
But I think they'll. I mean, this is Gearbox, right? They are good at supporting games post
They
launch.
are.
If you look at Borderlands, that thing had a lot of downloadable content, a lot of good downloadable content. So I don't think would come as a surprise to a lot of people if Battleborn gets the same treatment.
Yeah. Very cool. Is there anything else you want to say about Battleborn? I almost
Oh,
said.
you almost did it right
I
there.
did.
You're still
they have an
confused.
they have an uphill climb with that
Yeah,
name.
yeah, yeah. Maybe naming was poor, but it certainly isn't poor in a lot of other areas. And yeah, some things I want to say. There's an upcoming beta for the game here shortly, so people will be able to get on and try this out for themselves. Probably around the same time that this video goes live. So, and I think a lot of people, especially Borderlands fans, are going to be very, very happy with what this kind of turned into be.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. This was Kyle and Will with Attack of the Fanboy, and that was Battleborn.